So, Nigel, Parliament is prorogued.
Hooray!
Hooray!
I mean, talk about end of term. I mean, last night in the chamber, there were British members of Parliament holding up placards, scuffles going on behind the Speaker's chair. I mean, just like an overexcited bunch at a students' union, and this has been going on now for some time. You know, we saw last week opposition parties clubbing together, firstly, to stop us leaving on the 31st of October with a clean break, secondly, twice now, to prevent us having a general election. And when they appear on television, oh, they all look so smug, don't they? The SNP leader and the Green woman, and they all seem so pleased with themselves. And I don't think they've got a clue how ordinary folk are viewing this. I know you were out in the Midlands at the weekend. I was out in the southeast, and people are disgusted the way our Parliament's behaving. So I think what they're doing is they're putting themselves further and further away from Middle England, if you like. And I mean, the whole thing, 82% of people in a Delta poll published by The Sun on Sunday, 82% thought that last week's behaviour had reduced the House of Commons to a joke.
I think that begs the question, who are the rest?
Well, yeah, there you are. Someone must. But in fact, 6% in that poll thought Parliament was doing its job. So, look, it has been truly, truly shocking. I mean, there's a part of me that feels a bit sorry for Boris. There is a part of me. There's a part of me that doesn't feel sorry for Boris, in that he now wants to bring back Mrs May's withdrawal agreement. But I just think the fact we won't have to see or hear Bercow's voice for the next few weeks is enough to cheer me up.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
It has, and he's going, thank goodness. Because I stood against him back in 2010 and nearly killed myself in the effort. I had a plane crash on polling day in Buckingham. But I mean, what an awful man he's been. You know, to come out with his own political opinions about Donald Trump or Brexit or whatever it is. Speaker of the House of Commons should remain neutral. It's interesting to remember that during the English Civil War, Speaker Lenthal, even though both sides could possibly have killed him, he managed to maintain neutrality during the English Civil War. Bercow's not done so. Good riddance.
Isn't it funny how the Remainers were giving him an ovation last night, gushing praise, surely reinforcing the point he was never neutral?
Well, he has been allowed to overrule centuries of parliamentary precedent, you know, by allowing the Commons chamber to take the legislative agenda off the government. It's never happened before. That's what Bercow's done. I also thought everyone's standing up clapping. I mean, that's not what we do in Parliament.
No. But he allowed them to clap. He normally he doesn't allow them normally, but of course it's all about him.
But you know, well, of course it is. So he got up at 3:30 to make his tearful statement about Sally and the children. I mean, quite what they've got to do with it, I've no idea. And the tributes lasted until 5:05, an hour and a half of tributes to this man. I would have thought that, you know, a speaker retires or stands down, the whole thing should take about 90 seconds and be done with some dignity.
So when the end came for Theresa May, the waterworks came. When the end came for Bercow, the waterworks came. Now, do you have a grain of sympathy for the Speaker?
No, none. Why?
Well, I thought you might not.
Hang on,
you might not have a heart of stone.
No, he's been in that job for a heck of a long time. He has, I think, as a result of it, possibly the best pension
£1 million
ever been seen. Do I have sympathy for somebody who has degraded a great democratic institution? I mean, you know, it's over there. He's degraded something that the rest of the world used to look up to with respect. He's degraded something that with decolonisation post-1945, actually over half the world have adopted a very similar kind of system. And to see a speaker who's been far from neutral, no, it's been a dreadful thing.
So you call Theresa May the worst Prime Minister in history.
Yes.
Is Bercow the worst Speaker in history?
Well, hang on. I didn't just call her the worst Prime Minister in history. I said she was the worst and the most duplicitous. It's very important to get the second bit in. I just can't imagine, you know, there's ever been a Speaker who has done so much to damage the way in which Parliament operates and to have put into place such a political agenda. I mean, the problem is the way that he set up his replacement is that it'll be this Parliament that chooses his replacement.
And that means
this zombie Parliament, this failed Parliament. So it means probably another overt Remainer.
So even his legacy will be one of no neutrality.
Yes, although after a general election, it is possible for Parliament to get rid of a sitting Speaker. It just would take some nerve.
Okay, so wherever you go in Westminster at the moment, the only question on everybody's lips is what the hell is going to happen next with Brexit? Can you be mystic, Nigel? Where's this going?
I think there are two things that I can say with some certainty. The first is that Boris is going to move heaven and earth to bring back Mrs. Way's withdrawal agreement in some form. Probably he'll get some change of wording on the backstop, or more likely what he'll do is he'll get the withdrawal agreement rewritten and the backstop will apply to Northern Ireland only. He will effectively hive off a part of the United Kingdom onto different constitutional arrangements. He will then bring that withdrawal agreement back to the House of Commons. And we saw, people like Stephen Kinnock now panicking about their seats because of the Brexit Party. So there are some Labour people who could vote for it. I'm not saying it'll go through, and I personally intend to lead a big public campaign in the run-up to that, just reminding people why the withdrawal agreement is the worst deal in history, even without the backstop. And the second thing I can say with some degree of certainty is that a general election is not far away. Yeah, I know Parliament has twice stopped it, but Corbyn can't go on blocking a general election without doing himself huge harm in the opinion polls. Now, as for the rest of it, as for what Boris does in terms of extension, etc., I just don't know. But I think we're going to see one more giant heave at the end of October to try and get the withdrawal agreement through. And I have to say that the more you look at it and read it and study it, the angrier I've certainly become. We're almost better off staying in the European Union.
Wow. No, that's a strong thing to say.
Well, I mean, it's just such an awful agreement, and it'll leave us trapped for year after year after year. So our next mission as the Brexit Party is to stop the withdrawal agreement, and we're going to move heaven and earth to try and do that.
So October 31st is going to come and go, do you think? Do you think we're not leaving now?
I have to say this, that a lot of people out there were prepared to give the Conservatives one more chance. Give Boris a chance. But if he doesn't get us out on the 31st of October, boy, he's in. The Conservatives are in huge trouble. And, we saw in the European elections, they fell below 10%. So it is a big moment, but it's just going to be, as I say, there is going to be a vote in the House of Commons on this withdrawal agreement. Boris goes to the summit in Brussels on the 17th, 18th of October. So what I'm fearing is that Boris, the Boris with all the bravado, the Boris with the do or die, and I fear Boris selling us out in a big, big way, or at least trying to. I believe that the ERG and others will resist, and I should make it very clear that any Conservative, any sitting Conservative who votes for this new European treaty will be opposed by the Brexit Party at the next general election. So, all right, guys, you can go and vote for it, but you may well lose your seats a few months later.
It's interesting to look at today's Sun. They are effusive in their recommendations. They're backing.
Making plans for Nigel,
And they are saying you should do a pact with Boris, and they are urging Boris to do the same all of a sudden.
Well, look, we have, over the last week, done a series of 4-page ads in newspapers. Our position's perfectly clear. If Boris Johnson does the right thing, goes for a clean break Brexit, he may not have many friends in the parliamentary chamber. In fact, he may not even have many friends within the Parliamentary Conservative Party, but out there in the country, if you put together the strength of the Brexit Party and the strength of the Conservative Party, and if we cleverly had a non-aggression pact around the country, he would win. I said he'd win a majority between 60 and 100. Professor John Curtis, Strathclyde University, the most respected independent political psophologist in the country, wrote in yesterday's Daily Mail, he certainly thought a majority of 40. So there is a deal here to be done, and I'm very, very pleased that the Sun have picked up this line, as you say, urging both Boris and us to do this. But let me just add, if Boris goes for the withdrawal agreement, I repeat the point, we will stand against every MP who votes for that withdrawal agreement, because it is a sellout.
There's a certain individual that seems to be the sort of the barrier to this, Mr. Dominic Cummings.
Yeah.
Now, if Dominic were to pick up the phone and call you and say, Nigel, let's go for a pint, would you do that?
Of course, I don't bear grudges like that. I just don't operate like that. Life is just way too short. And anyway, you know, I sat down with Cummings, and it would have been January or February 2016.
Yeah.
All right? With everyone speculating when would the referendum be. And he made it clear to me that his view was that a leave vote in the referendum should be used as a renegotiating tool to get a different deal and then to put that to a second referendum. I fundamentally disagreed with that. He didn't even believe in triggering Article 50. So he didn't really want us to leave. He wanted our position within the EU to change. Now, clearly, when it came to the referendum, you know, we had Vote Leave and we had Leave.eu, and they didn't work together as much as they ought to have done. But you know what? That's water under the bridge. For all I know, Cummings is now a true leaver. I just don't know what to believe. That he is a difficult individual, that he is prickly, I think reports in our press from Downing Street show. Yeah. But it brings you back, doesn't it? You know, everything of Alistair Campbell. You know, he has said some very bright things over the years. And he says repeatedly, when he was there with Tony Blair, Campbell said, when I became the story, we had a problem.
Yeah.
And I think Cummings is so much
every day
the story that people are beginning to ask, does Boris make his own mind up on things?
Yeah.
Or is Boris being controlled from behind? How long Cummings lasts there, I just don't know.
So if Cummings were to be removed, would that make a pact more likely? Is he a significant barrier?
Let me be clear. I'm perfectly happy to sit down and talk to Dominic Cummings. We may have had our differences in the past, but if we genuinely have a shared goal, all that should be put aside and we'll work together. Look, I just want to get Brexit done. You know, we're so close to it in many ways. I just want to get it done. And if you have to make alliances with people who you wouldn't necessarily, you know, take home on a Sunday afternoon to meet mum for tea, so be it.
Well, you said you'd do a deal with the devil to
I
get
did
Brexit.
say that. Absolutely.
So Dominic, I'm sure he could do.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so the date of October the 31st coming and going, what does that mean for the election chances of the Brexit Party?
Well, I wouldn't put Boris's chances of getting us out by the 31st of October, but 50%. Maybe he's got half a chance of doing it. Yeah. If we don't leave on the 31st of October, then you will see almost overnight a big shift of support going from the Conservative Party to the Brexit Party. Although I do think that equally, in many of those Labour constituencies, when the penny finally drops, the extent to which Labour is now a Remain second referendum party. So, isn't it funny? The worse Brexit goes, the worse it is for the country, the better the Brexit Party do as a political organisation. That's where we are. But what I do know is if we don't have the Brexit Party, we didn't have the Brexit Party, we would never get a genuine Brexit in this country. I mean, just the existence of this organisation has completely reset the agenda, changed the debate, got rid of Mrs May. I don't think Boris would even be Prime Minister if the Brexit Party hadn't done what it had done. So you know, in many ways, I would like our key reason for existing to disappear, with Brexit being done. But I promise you, however long this takes, the Brexit Party is there for the fight.
I want to talk now about Labour. You know, my former party. You know, I'm from Nottinghamshire. I was born Labour. I thought I would die Labour. But I feel that this Labour Party has completely betrayed people like me. And Ashfield, where I'm standing, was there at the weekend. The streets are simply packed with people who voted Labour all of their lives that would never vote for Jeremy Corbyn. So how dangerous do you think Jeremy Corbyn is for Britain?
Well, he doesn't like this country very much, does he? I mean, he seems to support all our enemies, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, IRA. I mean, absolutely extraordinary over the years that all of our enemies appear to be friends of Jeremy Corbyn. He clearly loathes America.
Yeah.
I mean, in just the most astonishing way. I think he's brought shame on the Labour Party, really, with allowing this I mean, who'd have believed it, really, but this growth of anti-Semitism. So I really think he has shamed the party with that. I think in terms of economics, I mean, I just think he and McDonnell would be a disaster. I genuinely do, and you know, I'm a bit older than you. I remember the Labour government in the 1970s. You know, I remember income tax top rate being 83%.
And all the high earners fled.
All the youngsters fled.
Yeah.
People coming out of university, bright young people, men and women who wanted to be, you know, accountants or lawyers or, you know, the professional types, and off they went to Australia, America, a massive brain drain from this country. And I somewhat fear that happening again. The good news is, though, that he's such a bad leader that there's no, even if, however badly the Tories do, there is no prospect of a Labour majority.
See, it's funny because in Ashfield at the weekend, people were saying to me, Corbyn's your best ally. Because so long as Corbyn is in power, no one's going to vote for this mob.
I think that's probably right.
Which was actually...
No, I think that's probably right. And I
I
think, you know, so much of the media focus is what is the effect of the Brexit Party on the Conservative Party. And I think what often gets missed is that actually many of the most winnable seats in the country for the Brexit Party at the next election are Labour-held seats, where you've got this phenomenon. You see it in South Wales, you see it in the Midlands, you see it in much of the north of England. Labour constituencies, been Labour in most cases for decades, strong Leave votes and strong Remain Labour MPs, and they are big targets. And clearly, in most of these areas, the Conservatives have never won, they will never win, and that's why a non-aggression pact, if it did leave the Brexit Party as the sole key challenger to Labour in these seats, we'd start to win quite a few of them.
If John McDonnell grabbed 10% of the value of companies with more than 250 employees, do you think people like Donald Trump would stand by and let American companies be eviscerated by a communist chancellor?
No, I think in those circumstances, people would just start breaking the law.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when laws become enemies of men, men become enemies of laws. And you know, he physically, you know, he's going to need the companies to cooperate to do it.
Yeah. And why would they?
Yeah. Some of these ideas are mad. And McDonnell, in some ways, I think is a truer Marxist than Corbyn.
Yeah.
And this is real old school doctrinaire stuff.
Little Red Burke.
You know, and there they are, you know, and they are leading the Labour Party. So, two problems with the Labour Party. Firstly, the hard left takeover by momentum, but secondly, the fact that it's now a completely London-dominated party. And it does reflect the conversation in Islington and Hampstead, and not Isloin or Huddersfield or Doncaster or any of these places. So I think it really is so far away from its working class roots, it's not true.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's been a lot of talk, Cummings and Johnson, oh, well, the Tory party can go into the north and start challenging Labour in these seats. I just don't culturally think they can, but I know the Brexit party can do that.
Well, maybe they could if Boris was going to bring home the bacon. I mean, I heard on the streets of Ashfield over and over, and in Mansfield where I was at the weekend, you know, if Boris can deliver that, then maybe, then maybe.
Yeah.
But if he can't, and none of them are saying, oh, I'm definitely sticking with Boris, all of them are saying, I'll wait and see what he does.
Well, this is why the 31st of October is such an important date, such a massive date, because it's kind of built up in people's minds the same way March 29th did earlier on in the year. Boris doesn't deliver. I think the whole of politics is in trouble, actually. The whole of established politics is in trouble. But then, actually, isn't it time that politics realigned anyway?
Yeah.
You know, these two parties that have always operated as sort of, you know, internal coalitions, but you occasionally face a big, fundamental question, which Brexit is. And, you know, maybe last week with 21 Tory MPs going, maybe we're seeing that change. Although the gossip, hot from a Downing Street party last night.
Here we go.
Yeah, is that there's lots of talk about the 21 now being let back in, provided they give some sort of pledge of loyalty or whatever it is.
A vote.
And if Boris does that, you know, if Boris, having kicked them out, lets them all back in, he will look weak as hell.
So that's, you're allowed back in, guys, so long as you give me your vote to back
As long
a
as
withdrawal agreement.
I'm sure that's part of it, yes.
Oh dear.
Yes, I'm sure that's part of it. Absolutely certain that's part of it.
So the revolving door, so long as you vote for what I do, guys.
That's what it sounds like.
And that'd be treachery.
Yeah. I tell you what's real treachery is the fact that the people who put down the motion last week that now became law, that we have to extend for 3 months if we can't get this wretched deal through, the fact that they admitted that they were liaising with Brussels throughout all of this, being advised by Brussels. I mean, is that not collusion with a foreign power? Well, it's pretty close.
Because there are Brexit Party MEPs out there in Brussels now, sort of saying, how can we find out what those conversations were? No, Remain MPs from Britain going to Brussels, having closed shop talks about the significance of our vote. Is that even legal?
And how to extend.
Yeah, is that legal?
Well, so on my LBC show, I've had callers ringing in using words like traitor, treachery, and I keep saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, do you really want to use that word? Oh, yes, they say.
Yeah.
So people do feel very strongly about it.
They do.
Very strongly indeed.
And I think it's worthwhile talking about the language at the moment, because we often are accused, aren't we, of being inflammatory, using words like traitor, enemies of the people. But in actual fact, you know, on the street, people are much angrier than that. This is the softer end of the scale.
No, people are seriously angry, and I got that in the local supermarket last Saturday morning, doing a bit of early morning shopping, and people absolutely can't stand Parliament, put them all in the Tower of London. I mean, really, really strong stuff. I can't wait, in a way, to have a general election, because I think there's a chance now of real change in Parliament. I know it's difficult with first past the post, but there's a chance of genuine change, and gosh, we need it.
Why is it, do you think, that people always say, how come we're not like Paris? Why aren't there gilets jaunes on the streets? Why aren't we setting fire to cars? No, is it going to come to that point? I mean, people keep saying, is there going to be a civil war, or are we just British and we don't do that?
Well, I mean, what you have seen is a deterioration of public behaviour in London around this issue. I mean, to be absolutely honest with you, College Green, Parliament Square is almost a no-go zone for people like me at the moment. And some of the Remain anger has to be seen to be believed, added to which they have a sort of a sense of moral superiority.
Precisely.
You know, we are much cleverer than you and better than you. Now, we also saw at the weekend 50 or so thugs from the other side of the argument. So there has been some bad behaviour, but as you quite rightly say, if you put this into context of France or other countries, actually we're dealing with this, despite the fact we're having the biggest row we've had for hundreds of years, and in relative terms, we're dealing with it okay. We're dealing with it in quite a civilised manner, and long may that remain.
It's funny because...
it's our nature.
Yeah, I was walking through College Green last week to do an ITV interview, and the Owen Jones protest was on. Stop the coup. It wasn't a coup.
I know.
A prorogue isn't a coup, guys. Anyhow, and I was cornered by his protesters. I was called fascist, a Nazi. I was told I should go to jail. My children should be ashamed of me. And I attempted to talk to them, but it was impossible. The police came in, and I wonder where that anger and reticence has come from. Who's responsible for this anger?
So, civilised democracy only works with the principle of loser's consent. Loser's consent means you lose an election, you don't like the result, but you accept it, because that is what democracy is for. What you've had since 2016 are very senior public figures in this country. I'm talking John Major, I'm talking Tony Blair, I'm talking, you know, Joe Swinson, the current leader of the Lib Dems. Public figures in responsible positions who don't accept the result of the referendum, assume that Leave won because the Russians funded it, or all sorts of other crackpot conspiracy theories, which one by one have been proven to be wrong. But they've also continually said that Leave voters didn't know what they were voting for. And it isn't just insulting, it's more than that. It's actually saying Remain voters did know what they're voting for, and therefore we are better, we are more moral. And when you tell, if political leaders tell one group of people that they are effectively superior to another group of people, that's when you've got problems. And I like you, I look at this behaviour, I look at this language, I look at the anger that is there in the faces, in the eyes, and they genuinely believe they're better than us and that somehow we're wrong. And this is a great failure that's come from a top in British politics. So actually, when people say to me, well, Nigel, is it just Brexit you want? Actually, to be honest with you, I want to sweep away the entire political landscape as it currently exists. It's rotten, it's corrupt to the core, it is so much influenced by patronage.
Yeah.
We could be back in the days of Henry VIII. You know, and I'm talking to you today when the honours list's out overnight.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that people like Ollie Robbins, who've done catastrophically badly, is now not just Sir Ollie Robbins, but going straight to Goldman Sachs, where they all go. I find the whole thing. Oh, there's a whole list of them gone to the House of Lords as well.
Yeah.
The whole thing. To reward failure with these great honours of state, I think it's absolutely disgusting. Frankly, the way I feel about it, I'd scrap the whole lot.
Yeah, well, front page of the Telegraph. This is staff and cronies reaping the rewards of failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not pulling
Absolutely.
any punches there.
And it seems to get worse with every year that goes by. I mean, you've now got, in the House of Lords, you've now got over 600 of Blair and Cameron's mates who've been chucked into the House of Lords. Don't tell me that's a legitimate debating chamber, fit to make decisions about the future of our country, because it jolly well isn't.
Okay, I mean, it's interesting to talk about the House of Lords because one of the very popular things that came through from Brexit Party supporters right from the beginning of the European elections, never mind now, is the scrapping of the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Is that something that you'd look at?
Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. I mean, arguably, at least with the hereditary peers, they would come to Westminster from all over the country. This lot all live inside the M25.
Yeah.
This is the metropolitan elite who've now filled up the House of Lords, not representative of this country in terms of class or geography in any way at all. And I think it should go and go very quickly. I think we're going to have an elected upper chamber. I accept the argument that if you have an elected upper chamber, it has to have more power. And I think effectively, what would happen with that is the House of Lords would become rather more like the Senate is, perhaps in the United States of America. And I don't know, Martin. Maybe people serve, one term of 12 years, 10 years, whatever it is. But I think this is just so. The Lords now, the whole place is in disrepute. And after Mrs May's latest list that had been sent there, ever more so.
I want to talk now about the media. And we're here today with our new YouTube channel because a lot of people for a long time have been saying that Brexit didn't just break politics, it broke our media, or at least shone a bright light onto the inner workings of who journalists are. We know that 75% of people over there voted to remain. I've been a journalist for 25 years. I suspect it's pretty similar in the media, if not more so. How do you think the media has handled Brexit since the beginning?
To be honest, we're very lucky in this country. We have, with the printed press, we actually have a very broad range of views. They're available, on the shelf every day. You can buy The Guardian, which is very, very pro EU. You can buy The Times, which is very much Remain. You can buy The Mirror, which is fanatically Remain. You can get The Eye, which is Remain. You can get The Financial Times,
Which is Remain.
Well, I think that's almost their religion.
Yeah.
Or you can go for The Telegraph, very Eurosceptic, The Sun, very Eurosceptic, and The Express, the first newspaper in Britain to come out for us to leave 5 years ago. So we are lucky with our conventional press. If you went to France, to Paris today, you would not find that breadth of opinion. So we're very, very lucky with our print media. However much we may moan about them, complain about them, actually we've got the full range of views. Where it gets a bit more tricky is when it comes to broadcast media. And I mean, the BBC, it isn't even the political programmes. All the cultural programmes on Radio 4, from the food programme through, are predicting doom, devastation and disaster if we leave the European Union. And the BBC, I will say this for the BBC, I felt during the referendum campaign they actually were very, very careful.
Well, they had to be.
And they had to be, but they did do it, so, pay them credit for that at least. Since the referendum, they've been appalling. And the other shock, of course, is that Sky News, rolling news, actually, in terms of their presenters' views, in terms of the way their programmes come across, is clearly a pro-Remain channel as well. So, in the face of all of this, and in a very fast-changing world, it is online, it is the internet where things are happening. And the Brexit Party would not have got off to the amazing start it did had we not had such high quality films and videos. Right from that launch on the 12th of April, we had good stuff. And you look at the content that we're now pumping out, the cuts and clips and everything every day, and we are reaching many millions of people every single week. And I think with the launch of this new channel, which you're spearheading, I think there's a massive gap in the market, because whilst you're going to have people coming and talking to you, with a completely broad range of opinions.
Yeah. All opinions welcome.
Absolutely right. But the truth of it is, if you're watching news debate programmes on Sky and the BBC, there are very, very few people there actually pushing the Brexit argument and pushing it hard. So I think, I'm hoping that within a couple of weeks, there'll be a lot of people, not just watching this, but actually contributing as well, in terms of their messages, their comments, their opinions. So there's some big gaps in the market, huge gaps in the market. I mean, in America, you've got commentators in America with their own internet TV stations who are themselves reaching 3 or 4 million viewers a week. Nobody has ever done it in this country and made it work, but I think we can.
I think part of that journey was the realisation as we were campaigning in the Euros, and also then when we got into Brussels. At our rallies, we were just doing iPhone clips. And do you remember, I took an iPhone clip of you coming onto the stage in Birmingham.
Yeah. Nutso numbers.
It got 1.4 million views. Yeah. And meanwhile, a Channel 4 news clip is getting 50,000 clicks.
No, absolutely.
And a light bulb goes off. Why are we relying on the old mainstream media?
Well, do you know, after my last interview with Andrew Marr, I think, what is the point on a Sunday morning and going and doing these programmes if you're not even going to get a fair crack of the whip? I mean, I'm all up for being criticised and questioned, but if you're not going to get a fair crack of the whip, why bother? And you're quite right. In terms of total numbers, these mainstream channels are not getting huge numbers. We're going to be bigger than them.
I think we already are.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been doing stuff out in Brussels and Strasbourg, and we've already been getting more views than Newsnight.
Yeah.
And I think people just want a recalibration. Now, what we don't want is another echo chamber. We're in the heart of Westminster, but we need to think outside the bubble.
No, I agree with that.
Certainly, when you get out into the Midlands, the stuff of Joe Swinton, for example, saying bollards to Brexit, people out there take that as bollards to you. Yeah. Bollards to democracy. Your vote.
Well, and she also says, doesn't she? She also says that if there was a second referendum that backed leave, she'd ignore that too.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
And Caroline Lucas said the same thing.
It's just extraordinary.
So when we joked all along, well, best of 3,
I know.
It was a joke because they wouldn't even ignore. They wouldn't even.
Well, that's the
second one.
I mean, that's the other possibility here, of course, isn't it? Is that Boris fails in every way, the government falls, and we finish up with a Corbyn caretaker government trying to ram a second referendum through the House of Commons. That's the other scary scenario. Not that we'd lose, we'd win. But what's the point of having a second referendum with this mob in Parliament at the moment? Because they would simply ignore it all over again. We've got to have a general election, Martin. We've got to have a big... Hey, we said we want to change politics for good. Yeah. It needs changing for good.
It does. And I think that's what people echo on the streets. Now the mood is absolutely... I don't trust any of them. It's completely broken. I mean, they want to take a metaphorical water cannon to that place.
Yeah.
They want a clear out.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't about a tweak. This is about a radical change.
And yet, as you said earlier, no yellow vests, no burning barricades as we sit here. Yeah. We're a remarkably peaceable lot, really, aren't we?
Because I think the Brits want to do it the right way. They want to stiff upper lip, they want to go and vote, but they want to have the opportunity to vote. And they're being denied the opportunity to vote. Their vote is being ignored. Surely that's a perfect storm for what? Where's it going to go?
Real change in terms of the shape of political parties and the type of men and women that are sitting on the green benches in Westminster, and hopefully with a completely different chamber sitting in the upper house. And that's, real radical political reform is what you need when the system is broken. It's broken.
But it's funny because it says in the Sun here that you have no real political ambition.
Well, what they mean by that is, Boris Johnson has wanted to be Prime Minister for 40 years, right? Everything Boris has done has been to become Prime Minister. That's not my motivation. My motivation in politics has never been to have rank or title or position. My motivation in politics has been to change things, and in particular, to win back our independence from the European Union. So that's what there's... I mean, in fact, it doesn't necessarily read that way, but I take that as a huge compliment.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a career politician. I came from business. I came to do this because I was driven, motivated to change things. I thought, after the referendum, I'd done my bit. I stepped back from things, but I'm now back in the front lines, and I did promise everybody that if I had to come back and do this again, it'd be no more Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're going to push this through to a conclusion. But
You've been pretty nice so far. I mean, you haven't had to go onto a proper war footing yet, but what's to come? What's coming from you?
From me, firstly, I've started going back around the country again. So last week, I was in Colchester doing an event, I was in Lincoln doing an event, I was in Doncaster doing an event. This week, I'm going to be in Sedgefield doing an event, I'm going to be in Southport, up on the northwest coast, doing an event. Well over 1,000 people bought tickets for that one already. So, you know, we're getting good crowds coming to these events. We're live streaming these events, and we're reaching massive numbers. Again, back to where we were earlier, we're reaching massive numbers of people. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people following each of these events. Huge numbers. So back out there, the Brexit Party has got its candidates in place. I spoke at a get-together yesterday of about 200 of them. Just the most extraordinary energy and optimism in the room. So, yeah, I'm gearing the Brexit Party up to fight a massive general election campaign. If Boris does the right thing, it'll still be massive. We'll just do it in fewer seats because there will be a non-aggression pact. Let's see whether it happens. I can't sit here and predict whether it will or whether it won't. So getting ready for the election, and then absolutely surgically in October, in the run-up to that summit in Brussels on the 17th and 18th, and what I think is going to be an attempt to ram the withdrawal agreement through Westminster, as big a public information campaign as we can fund to make people aware of what a terrible deal this withdrawal agreement is. So I think I can quite safely say that between now and Christmas I'm fully occupied.
Do you think there's a chance, I mean, again, Mystic Meg, is there a chance of you being voted in as Prime Minister?
Well, if Boris decides, no, he's got to let the 21 back in, he must stop talking about leaving with no deal or a clean break. He tries to push through the withdrawal agreement and he fails. We get extended by 6 months, 9 months or a year. I think in those circumstances, the Brexit Party could become the biggest party in terms of numbers of votes in this country. That's all I can say. But I think it's possible.
If the Brexit Party is the biggest party, and that would lead to potentially a coalition, that would put you in the big chair.
Who's to say? You know, I mean, it's never, as the Sun quite rightly say, it's never been my ambition to do anything like that. My ambition is to change things. But look, we are living in completely unprecedented political times. Anyone that tells you they know the future is a fool.
I remember you said to me in Brussels, we went for a beer over the way. And
Really?
Yeah. I mean, even though you said you weren't drinking, but you had finished for the day. And to be fair, it was gin and tonic. You said to me something that I remember, and that is, in 100 years' time, students of politics will be writing about this period, you know, in theses and dissertations. How unique is this? How momentous is this? And how does it feel to be a part of this?
Oh, I mean, if you go back through British political history, I mean, it is completely unprecedented that a brand new political party comes along and within 6 weeks wins a national election. Nothing like that has ever happened before. And I feel privileged to have been a part of it. The only regret is that it's taken so long. I mean, I've been doing this since 1993. I've been out there campaigning, you know, standing out there on the streets since 1993, and I often joke with audiences that I thought for many years I might become the patron saint of lost causes, but we kept on going. It is a remarkable thing to be part of, and you've made a similar decision to me in a sense, that you drop everything to do this because it is such an important thing to do, and if we don't do it, who's going to do it? I tell you what, if we don't do it, are that chinless lot over there going to do it? Well, we know the answer to that, they're not. So it's just one of those extraordinary things that we've been called to do. But hey, you know, our grandparents and great-grandparents had to put on khaki and go overseas. We haven't got to do that. We're not starving. We can still afford to go for a drink. So it's. I hope you feel the same as I do.
I do.
That it's a great privilege to do it.
I do. It's been divisive. I mean, it's been amazing. I think a lot of people in the outside world think this is some sort of walk in the park. Hey, you go to Brussels, you're on all this big salary, and by the way, why do you even take your salary? They never say that to the SNP. They never say to the SNP.
I know.
You know, who take their money from this lot over the trough over the way there. But it has been divisive. Friendships have been sorely tested. Relationships have been sorely tested. And I think that is just down to the fact we just want to get on with our lives now. Because it's been a huge divisive topic. That wedge has been hammered in by the press, it's been hammered in by Westminster, and we just want to get on now, don't we?
We want to get on with the rest of our lives, and we can only do that with a clean break Brexit.
Mr. Farage, thank you.
Terrific.
Cheers.